Am I wrong for walking out of my cousin's wedding? I, 45 female, was recently contacted out of the blue by my cousin, John, 47 male, daughter, Emily, 23, who wanted to meet more of his family after he's been no contact with all of us since his wedding about 25 years ago. He was apparently furious with her when he found out and forbade any further contact unless we all apologized for walking out of his wedding. John had been engaged to Rachel for about 2 years and she was a very lovely and sweet person. All of the family loved her and they really tried to make her feel like part of the family. They'd come to holidays and birthdays for all the family and we threw a party for her on her birthday. We didn't hear from them in a month or two leading up to the wedding, but we figured they were just busy with last minute planning and none of us were in the wedding party. On their wedding day, all of us, about 20 cousins, aunts, and uncles, turned up to the venue to see signs for John and Kristen's wedding. We thought we were at the wrong place initially until John came out and confirmed that it was the right wedding hall. John said that he'd called off the engagement with Rachel a month prior after reconnecting with an old flame, and they decided to use the date to get married instead. We were all confused and upset, and while John was trying to calm everyone down, I went and used the venue's phone to call Rachel. She said that 2 weeks before, she had caught John cheating with Kristen and ended things right then. She said that John had refused to cancel what they could for the wedding and get back what money they could. Instead, he used them towards this new wedding with Kristen. Most of the family and I then walked out, saying that we were not going to stay for this bait-and-switch wedding, especially after he had treated Rachel so horribly and him not even telling anyone that he was marrying someone else. Yeah, that's fucked. He said that it shouldn't matter who he is marrying and that as a family we had to stay and support him. We didn't, so he hasn't spoken to any of us for 25 years. So, am I the asshole for walking out of the wedding and not apologizing even after 25 years? Hell no. Good for you.
Storytime about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. I come from a really big family. My mom has 5 sisters and 1 brother, and my dad has 4 brothers and sisters. All of them have their own kids, so I have a lot of cousins. And this means we have a lot of family get-togethers. Every single weekend, someone is hosting a party. We all get together and eat, and it's actually a really nice time. But there's always that one creepy uncle. In my case, it's my mom's brother. He's 46-year-old and has never married. But he's a bachelor. He's got money, so he basically has a bunch of sugar babies. Whenever my family tells him that he needs to get married, he says he'll never get married to anybody. He thinks women only exist for the pleasure of men. When I turned 16, I noticed that he would stare at me a lot. At first, it was just staring. Every now and again, he never did anything really creepy then, but just the staring was enough for me. I never told my mom about it then, not until I turned 18. This is when he started making comments like, wow, you're growing into your body, or wow, you got great hips. He would make comments about how I was growing up, like, ew. He even told my dad that he needed to keep me away from guys because I was growing up really quickly. And because of my curves, men would think that I was a woman. This is when I finally told my mom that he was making me super uncomfortable. She thought it was funny at first, so I avoided him at all costs. When I told my mom that he was making me super uncomfortable, she laughed it off. She thought it was funny. She said, oh, you know how he is. So from that point on, I basically avoided my uncle every time we were at a family event. When I turned 20, this is when things got even worse. He would ask me things like if I was a virgin, or if I had a boyfriend, if I had ever been on dates, and one time he even told me that he would get very jealous if I ended up bringing a guy to one of our family events. One time he complimented me on the dress that I was wearing, so after that I only wore baggy clothes to family events. The fact that I had to change the way that I dressed so that he could control himself makes me sick. I finally told my mom again that my uncle was always bothering me. It's when she told me that the world is filled with men like him, and that all I needed to do was just ignore him. So I told my dad everything. My dad took it a little more seriously and told my uncle that he needed to stop making comments. My uncle just laughed. I finally told my dad and he told my uncle to stop making comments. My uncle just laughed and told my dad that he was overreacting, and that all he said to me was that I was a pretty girl. What a liar. In part 1 and 2, I told you guys that it was getting worse, but here's where it actually gets even worse. Like I said, I have a really big family, so my cousins are growing up too. One of them just turned 13, and my uncle cannot stop staring at her. She's maturing a lot quicker than most 13-year-olds. He's already staring at her. So here's what I did. At the next family event, I sat right next to him. Every time he would stare at one of my cousins or try to make a comment at me, I called him out for it in front of everybody. I even recorded the things that he said. The fact that I even have to do this at a family event makes me sick. Instead of enjoying my time with my family, I have to sit next to my creepy uncle policing him. Anyway, it's totally worth it though. I'm making sure that my cousins don't feel uncomfortable. After I had enough recordings of him saying nasty things, at the next family event, I showed it to my grandma. I basically played it for the entire family. My grandma told him that he couldn't come to any more events if he was going to behave that way. And of course, he apologized to everyone right away. But not to me, he apologized to my dad. After his half-ass apology, he was let back into family events. I don't think that's enough punishment. Give me some ideas because I think I deserve justice. Creepy uncle.
Am I the asshole for setting an ultimatum with my sister over sign language? I, 30 female, am hearing. Married to a deaf man, 32 male. I'm going to call him Walter. And we have a deaf daughter, 6 female. I'll call her Cora. Walter comes from a primarily deaf family, but my family is all hearing. We have chosen to raise Cora with sign language and not go for an implant. This is simply for context. I am not seeking judgment on this. Before Walter and I got married, my parents began to take classes to learn ASL, as did my brother and his family. My sister, Emily, took them for a bit but ended up not continuing due to, quote, lack of interest. She and her husband have not taken any lessons, nor have their 3 children. Walter tried introducing their daughter to baby sign when she and Cora were both very young, but my brother-in-law asked him to stop, as he didn't want to, quote, confuse her.
Confuse her of what?
When we learned Cora was deaf, Emily pestered me about getting her an implant and continues to send me shamey Facebook posts about the benefits of the implant and those videos of babies hearing for the first time. She constantly says it's, quote, better than having to learn 2 languages. She's very pushy about it. My last straw was this past weekend. Emily was with all her kids, teaching them a game. I noticed that Cora wasn't joining, so I brought her over and Emily outright told me that Cora couldn't play because it's a game, quote, for people who can speak. I was fuming and pulled her aside. I told her that my daughter can communicate, just not how Emily wants, and said that I won't have my daughter excluded for something so petty. I told Emily that we will be cutting contact unless she starts putting in effort, learning ASL, teaching her kids, including Cora, and not being so disrespectful. We got in a spat about it, so my family left. Emily has not had contact since. My parents think I'm being unfair to Emily, but agree she should make more of an effort, and my brother has completely agreed with me. I do worry that I'm being clouded by mama bear rage, and this is actually super irrational, so I think I might be the asshole. So, who's the asshole?
No, Emily is the asshole. I just don't.
How my husband left me for a stranger he met on the side of the road. Story time. So we got married when I was 16 and he was 23. Yes, my parents tried to stop us, but they couldn't. At 16, I had quit school, didn't have a job, didn't have an education, didn't have an income. I was now a stay-at-home wife. At that age, I was too young and immature to recognize red flags, so I stayed with him. I didn't want to run back home to mommy and daddy like a burden. My mother eventually talked me into going back to school at 19 and getting my high school diploma. So I did. Now, when I turned 21, I started noticing that he was coming home late from work every day. I would ask him what was going on, and he would lie to my face and say that he was working late. He would lie for several months. He would even buy me gifts on our anniversary and holidays. Now, behind closed doors, things were really bad, but out in the public, we looked like the perfect couple. So at 21, I would ask him, what's going on? Why aren't you coming home from work? And he would lie to my face and say that he was working late. It wasn't until a family member came up to me one day and said, look, I need to tell you something, but I don't want you to get mad. And I was like, I would never get mad at you. And he said, he's cheating on you. I said, no, he's working late. He said, no, he's leaving work and going to see this woman. Before you ask me why I didn't leave him right away, it's because we got together when I was so young. Technically, he raised me. It sounds weird, but it's the truth. So when I left home with him at 15 to 21, he was all I ever knew. I had a very serious attachment to him. Honestly, he was like my parent. He controlled everything in our life, in our marriage. And I also knew that I didn't have a job, an income, barely an education. What was I going to do without him? I depended on him for everything. So I ignored what my family member had told me. I was so dependent on him that I felt like, well, cheating isn't that bad. It could be worse, so just deal with it. Until he started getting really cold to me, not coming home hardly. He was cheating so much with her that he was neglecting me. So one evening when he did come home, I flat out asked him, do you love her? He said, I love both of you. I can't describe how bad that hurt. And to know I had wasted 7 years of my youth. I had missed out on high school, proms, dances, friendships, time with my family, sweet 16. So I asked him how they met. So a few months back, we had been looking to buy a four-wheeler. One morning on the way to work, he seen a four-wheeler for sale on the side of the road. He pulls over to ask about the four-wheeler, and that's when he meets her. They hit it off. They start seeing each other. He didn't tell her that he was married until about 2 weeks into their relationship. But even when she found out, she kept seeing him. Clearly, she knew there was a reason that he wasn't bringing her around his family. She was okay with him being married for a while, but then she wanted him to leave me. The week after he told me about the affair, he packed his stuff up, moved in with his sister. His girlfriend moved in a few days after. If someone cheats to be with you, they're going to cheat on you too. I don't hate them. I just hate that I wasted my youth. How my husband left me for a stranger, part 2, story time. When he left me, he knew he was leaving me with all the bills, no income, no vehicle, no education, no way to support myself. He knew we had been together since I was 15, and I had nobody to fall back on. He didn't care. After a couple of weeks, he would start coming back and forth in between me and her. The moment he got what he wanted off of her, the old cuckoo, he wanted to come back home. So later that week, after they had done their deed, he came back to my house claiming he wanted to come back home and that he missed me. And talking about how sorry he was for the whole thing and he wanted me to forgive him and let's just start over. He said that he was going to break it off with her and move his stuff back to our house the next day when he got off from work. The next day after work, he shows up, but he doesn't have his stuff. And he still hadn't broke up with her. So I asked him, "Are you in love with her?" He said he was in love with both of us. He said, "You want the truth? You're better in bed." I said, "Oh, so now that you know the grass isn't greener, you want to come back home?" He said, "Yeah, but she's saying she's pregnant now." I said, "Yeah, that's a lie. She's telling you that to keep you there." I said, "But she don't need that excuse. Get your stuff and go back home." He said, "This is my home and I miss y'all." I said, "No, this stopped being your home when you left us for a stranger." So we had an argument. He went back to his sister's house. Shortly after, she did get pregnant. And I was happy for them. I grew up dirt poor, so I was used to struggling. But learning how to start a whole new life at 21 years old, going through a divorce, living off a can of corn each night, or a half a peanut butter sandwich was really hard. He never brought money. He never offered to pay a bill. He never offered any type of apology. He was mad at me for not letting him come back home, therefore I had to suffer. They're still together today, and I'm happy for them. I hate the way everything went down, but I'm also glad it went down. The reason I brought this story up is because yesterday I seen a very young girl on TikTok who her husband just left her for another woman. Her and this woman have been basically fighting over her husband for about a year now, and he chose the other woman and went to be with her. And this very young girl is going through a really hard time right now. I know she follows me, and I wanted to let her know you are not alone in this. Don't give up. You will heal from this. You will move on. You will find somebody better. Take your time, get your education, get yourself a good job and your own vehicle, and don't depend on anybody else for anything. Take care of you first. I see your videos of you crying, and I know exactly how you feel. Let it out. That's the best thing to do so you can start healing and rebuilding your life. But just know, you are not alone in this. A lot of us, many of us, have been through this. You keep saying, he left me for somebody else and I'm heartbroken. Baby, it's a blessing in disguise. Trust me, you are better off. I want all of you to know, sometimes bad things that happen are blessings in disguise. We just don't know it yet. You will heal from this. Don't give up.
The time I had a stalker, we'll call her Dee Dee. For reference, this happened a couple years ago. So I had just started going to this church because I was like, yeah, I kind of want to be religious. Like, let's try this. On the first day, I sat next to this guy and we kind of like just hit it off. He had a friend that was female, but they never dated or anything like that. They had just been friends for a really long time. And at the time, I didn't really know this. I was just like friends with anybody. But me and this guy really hit it off. We started hanging out, going to lunch, going to dinner, blah, blah, blah. Within 2 weeks, this woman was nuts. She started following us at every Starbucks we went to, every restaurant we went to. If we went and sat in the auditorium, like she was sitting either in the same aisle that we were, or she was sitting in front of us, like directly in front of us. If we left the church, she would literally follow our cars and literally force her way in between our cars. She was nuts. And me, the understanding person that I am, I was like, bro, I don't want your man. We're just friends. And I understand where this behavior is coming from. But I need you to understand, like, chill, bro. Me trying to be a bigger person, just like let this woman just do what she was gonna do. She literally went as far as like telling this whole congregation that her and I were like, I was after her man and like the whole world was ending. Mind you, this woman was 50 something years old. Me, I just ignored it because I was like, bro, baby, I have bigger problems than you. Her behavior literally continued on, escalated in all the areas that it did for like 3 years. Finally, one day I was like, bro, I'm done. And the guy during this time was like, I don't know what's wrong with her. Like, I've always been clear, like, we're just friends. And so he ended up ending off their friendship because she was just so crazy. Well, one day I was like, nah, bro. We went to the church parking lot. I was like, baby, nobody knows this about my life, but I just want you to know I had to go against both of my parents in a court of law. and I had to have restraining orders put on them. I am not afraid of putting a restraining order on you. I will take you to court. If I see you stalking me again, same restaurant, same red lights, sitting on the same row, I'm gonna start taking pictures of you, and I'm gonna build a record. I told her, I was like, you do not want to mess with me. You have messed with the wrong person, I promise you. I told her, I was like, I've already lost everything that I love and care about. So going against you, you mean nothing. So I promise you, I will go to the ends of the earth to make sure that your ass is put in jail. Well, guess what? That solved the problem. I have not interacted with her since. But then the pandemic actually hit after that whole incident. I ended up leaving that church. But anytime I see her car or even see her on the road, oh my gosh, my heart just starts beating and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Next time it happens, I promise you I'll record it. But tell me why I had a debt collector call me. Okay, first of all, long story short, it's for Sprint. It was from like 3 years ago. I owed them $2,000. I already told them they're not getting it. Quit calling me. I've been passed along from agency to collection agency to collection agency. And this fucking bitch just calls me. And I'm waiting for a call from someone else. So I was like, oh, maybe it's showing up as spam. I don't know why. So I answer it, and she's like, oh, blah, blah, I'm so-and-so to collect a debt for blah, blah, blah. How would you like to pay the amount of, it was like $2,100, blah, blah. Would you like to do money order, Visa, blah, blah, blah. And I said cash. And she was like, well, we don't take cash. You can do a money order, though. Are you ready for the address? And I said, yeah, go ahead. She said 810. And I said 4304. And she said, no, sir, 810. I said, oh, okay. 4304. And she's like, no, I'm trying to give you the address to where to send it. And I said, oh, okay. Sorry. I understand now. Go ahead. She said 810. I said 4304. And she's like, sir, this is a professional call. No, I am trying to collect a debt. No. And I said, okay, I'm sorry. Like, I understand now. Go ahead. She's like, okay, I'm going to give you the address. You ready? I said, yeah, go ahead. She said 810. I said 4304. She said click, and then the line hung up.